Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, guys. I'm just struggling with the screen share. I don't know why. I don't know why I can't get it. Driving me nuts.
Man.
Hi, Rabbi. Hi, Jeff.
Oh,
Dennis.
Ted, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back.
No, I'm not actually back. I'm still in Sydney for another week.
Hi,
I thought I'd
kids.
just
Nice to see you.
check that you guys are behaving properly, you know?
Good for you. Okay, I think I found it finally. I'm struggling to get this screen share on, but now it looks like I got it. Okay, very nice to join us. Where in Sydney are you?
In Darling Point. So on the east.
Is that Bondi area or the North Shore?
No, it's more on the Bondi side. Yeah.
Okay, enjoy.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to roll. And we have begun a new section of Tumas Mess, which is very exciting. It's all about the corpses and the dead and Tuma. So I'm sure you're very enthusiastic about this. But it's all part of Torah, and study it we must. So we shall. Tumat Met, chapter 5. So, I think it was Saddam Hussein of unblessed memory who said he was going to start the mother of all wars or something. Well, Tumat Mes, a corpse, is the mother of all impurities. Actually, in Talmudic language, it's the grandfather of all impurities. Avi Avot Hatuma, the father of all the fathers of Tuma. So the most Tome thing in the world is a dead body. We have spoken about this before. God and life are synonymous, and therefore death is somewhat, although it's all part of God's plan when it happens, it's somewhat the opposite of life and ungodliness, and the neshama has left, so it's just a shell, and therefore it is a source of tumah. Much philosophical writing on the subject, but we're doing the halacha now. That's just the gist of it. And then things that touch the dead and become tomei, and then they can render other things that they come in contact with tomei, impure, to different degrees. So we'll go through some of that today. Aleph, kol hamistamen machmas hames, all entities, whether humans or kalim, which is vessels, utensils, that become impure because of contact with a human corpse, contract impurity that lasts 7 days. So you touch a dead body, you are tomei for 7 days. Meaning, when a person or a kli, which is a utensil, touch an entity that imparts the impurity associated with a corpse, when touched or contract impurity through ohel. Ohel means a tent, literally. It means you're under the same roof as the source of tumah. If you are tumat ohel, means you're under the same roof. Or carry an entity. If you pick up and carry an entity that imparts the impurity associated with a corpse, then he or it contract impurity the last 7 days. So not only the person who touches the corpse is tomei for 7 days, but in turn, things that come in contact with that individual also become tomei for 7 days, as he quotes the verse, Kol habo el ha'oel, anyone who enters the tent and anything that is inside the tent will be impure for 7 days. So if there's a dead body in the tent, in the house, things, people and objects in the house likewise become tomei. A person who becomes tomei because of a corpse or kalim, utensils, which such a person touches, contracts impurity the last 7 days, as it says in Numbers, and you shall wash your garments on the 7th day and become pure. So we see that you have to wait for the 7th day before you can purify yourself in a mikveh. If by contrast, a person touches another person who contracted impurity because of a corpse, whether he touched him after he disengaged himself from the corpse, meaning he's not. So one person is touching the corpse with his right hand, and he touches someone else with his left hand. Or he removes his right hand from the corpse, and then he touches someone else after touching a corpse. The second person is impure only until the evening, as it says, and the soul that touches it will be impure until the evening. So the soul, meaning a human being, as opposed to a utensil, is impure only until the evening. Now, that sounds a little bit lenient. I would have thought that'd be tamei for a whole week. So he hastens to explain. This is the scriptural law, meaning by Torah law, by biblical law, a person touches a corpse and then touches another person. The second person is only tamei till that evening. He can go to the mikveh and then be purified that very same evening. He does not have to wait 7 days, according to biblical law. However, according to rabbinic law, the rabbis made a precautionary measure. If one touches a corpse and touches another person while he's still touching the corpse, the one guy is touching the corpse with his right hand and touches someone else with his left hand, they both contract impurity for 7 days, as if the second person touched the corpse himself, because he's connected to the corpse via the intermediary of the first guy who's touching the corpse with his right hand and his friend with his left hand. However, there's a disclaimer and a proviso here. This is quite interesting. You'll enjoy the logic here. When does this apply? With regard to partaking of truma, which is sacred, that which we give the kohen, and only the kohen and his household may consume, so it's sacred. You may not partake of it in a state of truma. And sacrificial foods, which are also sacred, something offered on the altar, may also not be consumed if you are tomei. By contrast, so there you'd have to wait 7 days, because there's no harm in waiting 7 days, so you wait 7 days. However, a Nazirite, the Nazir, or one who has to bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, who are touched by a person who touched the corpse, only become impure until the evening, as it is in scriptural law, whether the first person is still touching the corpse or not. Even if the guy is touching the corpse with the right hand and touches someone else with his left hand, when it comes to the Nazir, the Nazirite, and the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, he'll only be tomei that day until the evening. Will follow the scriptural law there and not the rabbinic precaution of 7 days. Why? So in the notes, he explains, I don't see footnotes here for some reason, but in my book here, I have notes which explain very logically. Let me read it to you. The rationale is that adherence to this rabbinic stringency of 7 days means the guy would not be able to bring the Korban Pesach. He'd have to wait till a month, till Pesach Sheni. If a guy is a Nazirite, he's going to have to shave his head if he becomes tomei. But his tumah for 7 days is only rabbinic. Is a Nazirite allowed to shave? No. Under normal circumstances, a Nazirite is not allowed to shave or cut his hair for 30 days or for the amount of time he took the vow for. So, but when you become tomei, you have to shave and start all over again. So there, like by the Korban Pesach, rabbinic law would interfere with biblical law. So if rabbinic law, if a stringency of the rabbis is going to prevent someone from performing a biblical commandment to bring the Paschal lamb on Erev Pesach, the rabbis would not want to do that. That's surely not what the rabbis intended. Never. So therefore, it only applies to other areas of tumah, like eating truma or sacrificial meats. But when it comes to the Korban Pesach and the Nazirite, we would not impose the rabbinic stringency. Got that? It's quite logical. 3, when kalim, utensils become impure due to contact with the corpse, whether because they were touched or because they were under the same shelter, meaning ohel, meaning the same roof, same tent. One who touches them is considered like one who touched the corpse itself. So the utensils came in contact with the corpse one way or another. Now you touch those utensils. It's like you touched the corpse. And just like the corpse imparts tumah for 7 days, so too you'll be tameh for 7 days by touching these utensils that became in contact with the dead. And where do we learn it from? Interesting, Numbers 19. That's the Battle of Midian, if I'm not mistaken. And the Jews were very victorious, amazing victory. And there was a lot of spoils. And then we have all kinds of laws of those who came in contact with the dead. So in the olden days, you didn't fire missiles or smart bombs from 100 miles away. It was hand-to-hand combat, and usually with a sword. So if you killed your enemy with your sword, you are now in contact with the corpse via the sword. The sword is a metal utensil which is touching the dead. He's pierced the guy and killed him. So the sword is in contact with the dead, and you're holding the other side of the sword. The blade is in the dead body, and the handle is in your hand. So it says there, one slain by the sword or a corpse. So according to the oral tradition, we learn, the Gemara says, a sword is like a corpse, meaning not just a sword, ornamental sword on the wall, but a sword which has actually killed someone. So the sword in turn will make the person who didn't actually touch the dead body directly, he did it indirectly through the sword, but that too will make him tameh for 7 days. And like it is with the sword, so it is with other kalim, other utensils, whether they are metal utensils or other kalim that can be purified by immersion, or they are garments. So that would mean wood, bone, or glass. These laws are inferred from Numbers 31, which states everyone, this is after the war there in Midian, everyone who killed a person and everyone who touched the corpse must purify himself. Would one think that a person who shot an arrow or threw a stone and killed another person from a distance, he's had no direct contact, he shot an arrow or threw a spear or a stone and killed someone. David killed Goliath. Did he actually touch Goliath? No, it was a slingshot, it was a stone. So why should he become tameh? He had no direct contact with the dead. The answer is, you're quite right. It's speaking about a person who kills with a sword or the like, who becomes impure because he touched the kli, the utensil with which he killed, and that sword touched the corpse. But if it's a bow and arrow or a slingshot or other kind of missile from a distance, it will not render the shooter tameh. What is the source from which we learn that kalim that touch a person that can become pure? Become pure, because it says, and you shall wash your garments on the 7th day and become pure, which teaches that any person who contracts impurity the last 7 days imparts impurity the last 7 days to his garments as well. So, in summary, when a person touches a corpse and then touches another person, the first guy contracts impurity the last 7 days, and so does the second. And the second impurity lasts until the evening by biblical law. Eh? When kalim utensils touch a corpse and then other utensils touch them, they both contract impurity the last 7 days. An entity whose connection is of the 3rd degree, whether a person or a utensil, contracts only the impurity that lasts until the evening. So 3 times removed from the corpse. When utensils are touching a corpse and a person touches those utensils, and then other utensils, all three contract the impurity that lasts 7 days. And entities connections of the 4th degree will only last until the evening. Okay. When does this apply? With regard to truma and sacrificial food, with regard to liability for kores. Kores is a very serious excision of the soul punishment for entering the temple or partaking of sacrificial foods when you are in a state of tumah impurity. Only the first two are liable. The first person who touched the corpse and the second person who touched him. As the verse states, everything which is touched by the impure person becomes impure. So by kores, we would be more lenient because we don't want a person to suffer that terrible consequence. When by contrast, one touches utensils that were touched by an impure person, or one touches a person who touched utensils that touched the corpse, he's exempt, as we explained elsewhere. For these matters, although part of the oral tradition, are not considered as scriptural law, the rationale is that it was only explicitly stated in the Torah that one who became impure because of contact with a corpse becomes a primary source of impurity. And secondly, that an entity, whether a person or a utensil that touches him becomes impure, becoming a first degree derivative of impurity. So, we have the concept here of toldot. Toldot is an offspring, meaning derivatives. So we said the corpse is avi avot hatuma, the father of the father, the grandfather of all tuma, and one who touches a corpse is an av hatuma, a father of tuma, and can in turn convey 7 days. And beyond that, it becomes toldot, the offspring. Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi. It goes down a level as you progress further and further away from the corpse. An earthenware container, clay cheres, has its own set of laws because of its unique composition. When an earthenware container touched the corpse or was in the same structure under the roof, it contracts tumah, but it does not impart tumah, neither to a person nor to another earthenware container, nor to any other utensil. For an earthenware container never becomes a primary source of tumah, neither with regard to tumah stemming from a corpse or other sources of tumah. This is scriptural law, which is also part of the oral tradition. Seb, this is a great general principle with regard to tumah. Any primary source of tumah imparts ritual impurity to humans, garments, and utensils. If it's a primary source of tumah, what we call av hatumah, father, whether it's metal or utensils that can be purified by immersion, which I said before means wood, bone, or glass, or earthenware containers. Any entity that imparts impurity to a person or kalim when touched is called the primary source of ritual impurity. Any derivative of ritual impurity imparts ritual impurity to food and drink, but does not impart tumah to a person or utensils, neither earthenware or others or garments. So food and drink is more susceptible to tumah than utensils. 8, any entity that touches a primary source of impurity is referred to as a derivative of the first degree, rishon. Okay, so you have the corpse, the grandfather, the one who touches the corpse, the father, and then the next level is rishon, the first derivative. Anything that touches the derivative of the first degree is now next level, sheni. Second degree, derivative of the second degree, sheni. Anything that touches that becomes shlishi, a derivative of the third degree. And anything that touches that becomes revi, derivative of the fourth degree. A derivative of the first degree, and those on a lesser level are called the offspring of impurity, vlad hatuma. Vlad means a child, an offspring, or toldot. 9. Any entity, whether a person or utensil, which contracts impurity the last 7 days as a result of contract with a corpse, is related to as tome mate. Tome mate. Tome from a mate. Mate is a corpse. The person or the utensil is a primary source of tumah with regard to imparting tumah to truma and sacrificial food, as we said before. From it are counted a first-degree derivative and a second-degree derivative to impart tumah to people and kalim when it is touched, like other primary sources of tumah, but it does not impart tumah when carried. Interesting. So if you don't touch it directly, but you carry it, let's say it's on a board or a bed, and you carry the bed, you did not become tameh, even though you moved it, but you didn't touch it directly. 10. Any entity that contracts tumah that lasts until the evening is considered vlad hatumah rishon, first degree derivative. It is possible that a fourth degree contact with a corpse can be a first derivative of impurity, as we explained with regard to truma and sacrificial foods, right? When it came to truma and sacrificial foods, we were more strict, and it doesn't have to be direct. It can already be down the line, a few offspring down the line, it'll still affect sacred foods, where we are stricter. 11, when a person or utensil contract impurity because of contact with the lands of the nations. Oh, the sages said that outside of Israel, non-Jewish lands will be a source of tumah. Just the land, because of the way that the pagan nations conducted themselves. They were quite degenerate. Then there's something called Beit Hapras. Have you come across that term before, Beit Hapras?
Yes.
Who can tell us what a Beit Hapras is? Was that Dave?
Yes. I don't remember now.
It sounds
it's
familiar, but you don't remember what it is. Okay.
a house of
No. It's not a house. It's
No.
called Beit Hapras, but it means a field actually. It's a plot of land where maybe there was a battle, maybe it was a battlefield once upon a time. And we suspect that there are dead bodies underground. Now, can a Kohen walk across this battlefield? We don't see any dead people. It's growing mealies at the moment. Can a Kohen walk across a mealie field? Yeah. But not if it was a battlefield and there's a strong likelihood that there are dead bodies underneath. A Kohen may not come into contact with the dead. A Kohen may not be within 4 cubits of a grave. We know that from our cemetery protocols, right? So that's a Beit Hapras. A Beit Hapras is a plot of land where there may be certain dead bodies underneath, but we're not 100% certain, and we certainly don't know exactly where they are, so we take certain precautions. So, when a person or kalim contract impurity because of contact with the lands of the nations or a Beit Hapras, or because he carried such earth, or he touched weltering blood, I must confess, I'm not 100% sure what this means. I think it means blood from a dead person, or dying person, or dead person. Golel or doifek is, if I'm not mistaken, it's parts of a corpse. Or he entered a shelter, meaning he was under the same roof where there was located this weltering blood. In all the above instances, those individuals or kalim and the like become primary sources of impurity by rabbinic decree, okay? The Beit HaPras, for example, and the lands of the nations is a rabbinic decree that it's a source of tumah. It's not by scriptural law. Similarly, garments that contract impurity that last 7 days because of these then are all primary sources of impurity by rabbinic decree. So something that's tumah for 7 days by rabbinic decree can in turn impart impurity to something else. 12. Ohel, a tent itself. You know that, I mean, in Johannesburg, we call the building at the cemetery, at West Park Cemetery, we call the building with the offices and where the dead bodies are kept and cleansed, and where the funeral starts off from, this funeral service, that building is called the Ohel. When I'm in New York, I visit the Rebbe's Ohel, meaning his resting place. But strictly speaking, in halacha, ohel means the tent, and a tent where there is a dead body or a source of impurity, which will in turn impart impurity to others. So a tent, the tent itself, which has tumah, the tent becomes tumah, meaning the roof. When? And a tumah of 7 days by scriptural law. And I didn't even touch it. It just has tumah underneath it. It's as if it was a garment touched by a corpse. When does this apply? Only if the tent was made of cloth, sackcloth, wooden utensil, or an animal hide, kosher or non-kosher. There are this from Exodus, and he spread the tent over the sanctuary. The term tent applies only to an entity woven or made from hides, as in the sanctuary. We just learned last week, Parshas Truma, the Mishkan, the roof of the Mishkan, Moshe's sanctuary. It was not a permanent abode. They kept erecting it and dismantling it for 40 years, many different stops, 42 stops from Egypt to Israel over 40 years. So it was a soft roof, it was a portable edifice. Put it up and take it down as necessary. It was not a solid roof. There were different layers we read. You remember 2 weeks ago, Parshas Truma, we read there was goat skins and there was linen and tachash skins, that the extinct animal that was very colorful. So similarly, we derive from that verse that an ohel roof over the dead will become tomei only if it's a soft kind of roof from material like the sanctuary was. However, if the structure of the roof of this ohel was made from wood or mats or bone or metal, it is pure. For sure, building materials like we have today, a proper roof, wood and tiles and whatever, it will not become tomei from the dead body inside. Whenever the Torah uses the expression the house is tomei, the intent is that the person and the kalim inside the house. So you say the whole house is tomei, what do we mean? We mean anybody inside, and we mean any objects, utensils inside become tomei and will have to be purified. There is no product of wood that becomes impure as a tent except flax. 13, when garments touch a corpse, even though they are considered as a corpse with regard to imparting impurity for 7 days to other entities that touch them, they are not considered as a corpse with regard to imparting impurity when one is under their shelter or when one carries them. So if you carry garments, it does not become, so garments can become tomei, but they don't become tomei from being under the same roof or from being carried with the dead, say. The rationale is that the impurity stemming from carrying a corpse itself is not explicitly stated in the Torah. And with regard to the impure and parably a tent, it says, Odom ki yomut be'ohel, a man when he will die in a tent. Therefore, if one carried garments that touch the corpse without touching the actual garments, or one stands over them like an ohel, like a tent, they are held over him like a tent, or they are under the same roof with him, he will remain tahor, he will remain pure. Similarly, when a person contracted tumah from a corpse and stood over kalim, they are pure. One who contracts impurity from a corpse imparts impurity only how? By touching, by direct contact, not by hovering over it. Finally, number 14, a corpse does not impart tumah to a seat or a couch that is below him, nor to articles that are placed upon him, only to the utensil that touches the corpse, whether it was at its side or below the corpse or on top of it. What I think this means is that it has to be direct contact, but indirect contact will not render it tummy, as he explains. Say there were 10 garments, let's say you have 10 blankets on top of a dead body. Okay, the guy was very cold while he was alive, and they needed 10 blankets to keep him warm. Then he died. So he's got 10 blankets on top of him, yeah? So there's 10 garments, one on top of the other, and the corpse was on top of them. And then there were 10 garments on top of him. Okay, so they made a little bed for him of 10 garments. And then he was cold, so they put 10 garments on top of him. So there's 10 garments under him and 10 garments on top of him. How many will become tameh? So he says, the garment that is touching him and the second garment, which is touching that garment, touching him, those two will contract tumah for 7 days. The third garment, however, 3 away from the corpse, whether on top of him or below him, will only contract tumah till the evening. When does the above, that all the garments above below are pure, apply? When the impurity, the tumah, was not what we call ritzutza. Ritzutza. I'll soon explain what that means. When the impurity was not ritzutza, the laws of oil do not apply, or if there was a stone intervening between them, as will be explained elsewhere. So what this means, let me see here. So impurity, I'm reading to you from a note. Impurity is described as ritzutza when there is not a handbreadth, okay, the size of a fist, of free space between the corpse and the objects above it. In such an instance, the impurity rises through all the garments, as it were, and causes them all to become impure. So he says, when does this law apply that only the ones touching and touching, the first 2 become tameh, and the third one just for the day, and the others are pure? When does this apply? When the impurity was not ritzutza. So ritzutza is when there is not a handbreadth. So if he says it's not ritzutza, that means there is a handbreadth. So there's a handbreadth between the dead person and the subsequent blankets, or between the different blankets. I'm not 1,000% sure. He says it's discussed in chapter 7, halacha 4. He says a grave does not impart impurity to the area around it unless there is empty space of a handbreadth long by a handbreadth wide by a handbreadth high above the corpse. Should that condition be met, even if one built a structure over the space of 1 cubic handbreadth up to the heavens, to the sky, it'll impart impurity in its entirety, because the entire structure above to the heavens will be considered as an extension of the grave. So to be 100% honest, I'm not 1,000% sure what to make of this. Sounds like if the blanket is directly on the body, on the dead body, that then it will not carry on forever. Only to those immediately above or below it. But if there is a gap of a handbreadth between the dead body and the next covering, then it'll go forever. I'm not 100% certain on this. So in chapter 7, what's today? 2, 3, 4. This is chapter 5, 2 days. So on Wednesday, who does the shir on Wednesday?
It's,
Rabbi Hecht.
Rabbi Hecht. Rabbi Hecht is unfortunately, Penny Hecht. Is it Penny Hecht?
yes, yes.
What?
Yeah, his father is sitting Shiva in New York for his mother. So Penny just lost his grandmother. So Rabbi Hecht on Wednesday, hopefully will explain this in more detail about the gap between the corpse and others, depending on how far that tumor will extend. I think we once spoke about it. There are some rabbis who are so strict. If they're on a plane, El Al plane from Tel Aviv, as going to Europe or America or South Africa, chances are at some stage it goes over a cemetery. I once heard of the head of the London Beth Din, who was a Kohen, Rabbi Ehrenschrau, Dayan Ehrenschrau. I once heard that he had a whole concoction made for himself to wrap himself in some kind of blanket or hermetically sealed some kind of outfit, that if he goes over a Jewish grave, he should not be affected. So that's, I don't know anybody else has ever done that, but that's the issue. If the grave is tameh and it goes oil, then you can't go over it, not just immediately over it, you can't go over it up to the heavens. So that's a big problem when you're flying a plane over a Jewish cemetery in particular. Okay, let's see if we remember what we learned here. Question 1 in the quiz. Do the clothes of one who touched the corpse also contract an impurity that lasts 7 days? Or is it only till nightfall? So, well, the question is yes or no. Is it 7 days, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, 7 days.
Yes.
Oh, guys, well done. If one who touched the corpse touched another person, what is the status of the second person? And you have a multiple choice. Tomei till that night, Tomei till the night according to biblical law, according to rabbinic law for 7 days. He's impure for 7 days according to biblical law. A, B, or C?
I'd say A.
Well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Well done. Look it up. Person, by second paragraph. First paragraph, only until the evening, okay? Well done. If a keli, a utensil, touches a utensil that touched a corpse, what is the law? So it's twice removed. 7 days till evening or not at all?
I think number 2.
I thought it was 7.
7. Again 7.
Utensils are very contagious. And finally, we said a kli cheres, an earthenware keli had its own law, different from other laws. Can an earthenware keli that touched a corpse impart impurity?
No.
No, no.
No.
Well
No.
done, everybody. Okay, God bless you all. Hopefully we'll get to more exciting subjects in the not too distant future. And
Thanks.
Rabbi.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Thank you,
joining
Rabbi.
us.
Thank you, everybody.
God bless. Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
Rabbi.
All the best.
Shavuot Tov.